My name's Michael, and I'm just back from church. It's just gone 12 on a Sunday, and I felt inspired to make this video talking about why I go to church. I'm quite interested in the history of religion, biblical scholarship, and the philosophy of religion. I follow quite a lot of the debate that's going on at the moment between atheists and apologists. And I have to confess that in most of these debates, I find myself on the side of the atheists rather than the apologists, in the sense that I find biblical scholarship very interesting. I find the light that it sheds on the Bible very interesting, and I think that it severely undermines the view that a lot of apologists have, that the Bible is somehow the unexpurgated Word of God, or is in most of its content divinely inspired, even if not absolutely literally true. And this makes being a Christian very difficult, especially given that I do actually care about whether the doctrines that I'm asserting I believe are actually true or not. And the blunt truth is that when we recite the Nicene Creed, which is supposed to be our statement of faith and supposed to lay down the central points of what we believe, I'm fairly clear. I actually don't believe I don't believe in the Nicene Creed at all in the way that the authors intended it to be believed. I can kind of make a convoluted thing where I could say, yes, I kind of believe in the virgin birth in a way. You know, I don't believe that a dove appeared to Mary, and that she was somehow divinely impregnated with the seed of God through this apparition. I don't believe that. I believe that it is that part of the story is symbolic. Now that it's important. I believe that symbolism is the whole point of symbolism is that it symbolizes something. I think a lot of people lose track of that, and that's really what this video is about. Because when I was sitting in church, I was thinking about why I'm there and what I actually believe and how I relate to what goes on in the church, particularly when I know that the officiants and the church hierarchy, by and large, have a certain set of beliefs about what the church is, what its function is, about God and God's relationship to us, beliefs that I do not share. So why do I go? Why do I still see this thing as valid? Well, I think a lot of people go without passionately believing all the doctrine. They go because it's part of their community. It's a place that you meet people, and while they may not sort of really want to take apart all the doctrines, the basic message of Christian love and forgiveness, of caring, of trying to be a loving and kind person is something that resonates with them. Indeed, it resonates with me. And I know that if you're outside of Christianity, you probably, your main encounter might well be with evangelicals who seem much more bothered about recruiting you to become part of their movement than about being of service to their community, of spreading a message, of sort of spreading the message of belief and joining the cult, but actually just sharing the love, right? You know, being a caring, decent, supporting, loving human being, right? So, and a lot of these evangelicals, part of their message of join is you're a sinner, you're evil. So there's an awful lot of sort of, you know, antagonism to various groups, and it all becomes seen as being very judgmental, very cult-like, and quite dangerous, I think, to a lot of people outside. Well, but if you're, for most Christians are not in one of these giant mega churches, and it's not like that. The church is a community in their village or their town. It's part of their community. It's where they go and meet and celebrate shared values and, you know, just being together. And I value that. But I do care about the doctrines. You know, I am by training a philosopher. It is one of my passions, and so it really matters to me. So the point of this video is that while I was in church, a really good analogy came to mind, right? And the analogy is a plug, right? I believe that the Christian mysteries, and I say mysteries rather than the doctrine, if you know that there is a story that is placed around the year that unfolds as you go through the year. It's a story going from Christmas and the birth of Jesus. You know, well, I suppose it starts with the I can't remember what the name for it is, but it starts with Mary being visited by the Holy Ghost, you know, the Spirit of God, the divine inception of Jesus. And then it goes through Christmas, the birth of Christmas, and it goes around to Easter. And as you follow around the year, you get different parts of this mystery, like a play, right? A mystery play. And quite often, some of this was enacted as mystery plays in the medieval period. So I see Christianity as a mystery, where a mystery is a story that conveys something, right? And at the heart of the story, you have the Trinity, right, which is where the symbolism of the plug becomes very sort of pertinent. You know, you've got your three prongs of the plug. So, to me, a lot of the debate between, on the one hand, apologists, and on the other hand, the atheists, concerns whether the plug, right, the mystery, is what it claims to be. And they're treating it as claiming to be the sort of, this source of knowledge. They're claiming that it somehow is the truth, that what Christianity is about is believing that this story is true, right? And to me, that's like taking a plug and examining the plug and saying, well, does this plug really work? Look, I'm not getting anything out of it, you know. This plug doesn't power anything. You know, you've got a set of beliefs about how this plug somehow mysteriously brings this strange force called electricity into wires and can do all sorts of wonderful things. But look, here's the plug. It's just a lump of plastic and somebody made it. You know, there's nothing mysterious and wonderful about it, where's the electricity? And other people are holding up the plug and saying, well, you might not be able to see it working, right? But it will. It's not doing it right now, but it will. You'll have to wait till you die, and then you'll be able to plug the plug in and light everything up, and it will be wonderful. And I think, personally, that this is just my own view, I think that they're all missing the point. You see, the plug isn't what does the thing. The plug is not what powers your television. The plug has to be plugged into the mains. It has to be connected up in the right way. And the point of the plug is not the plug, right? You don't have to, it's not about believing in the plug. It's not about celebrating the plug particularly. It's all about plugging the plug in, and then the electricity can flow from the grid. Right? So, to me, the function of the Christian mysteries is to orient you towards the community you're part of, your neighbours, the people around you, but also to a deeper reality, or a realm that you don't normally recognize or acknowledge or see. Now, for many believers, this is connected up to heaven. And the atheists will look at this and say, yeah, but heaven really starts out as being just up there, because it does, right? When the heavens feature in the early biblical stories and in other, it is up there. It is just, it's literally where the clouds are, right? These pictures of angels and things in clouds, these are not metaphors, right? Heaven is up there, hell is below us, and we live in Middle Earth, right? And that's the surface of the earth. This hell that's below us with the hellfires and stuff, this is not abstract stuff. This is the magma. This is the stuff that comes out of volcanoes, is the fire below. So the heavens are above us, it's the sky above, right? And so you end up with that conception of God as something very distant looking down on us, and we pray to this distant being, and we might not see his hand at work most of the time because he's really up there. And it's not until we're lifted up, until we earn the right to be lifted up, right? And to me, that's getting everything wrong, right? The key is not heaven, it's the water. It's the water of baptism. It's the living water that Jesus talks about. And what is the living water? The answer is that it's a symbol. It's a symbol of the unconscious. My perspective is very Jungian. So Jung sees consciousness, our rational mind, our sort of language-using rational mind, as being a fairly newly emergent thing. Right? It's come into being, but it hasn't emerged from nothing. It's emerged out of it's emerged out of the unconscious mind, which itself has kind of emerged out of bodies and it's ultimately a production of the universe, right? But or the deeper reality. But this is not the universe as as an externally viewed object in the way that empiricism perceives and understands it, a world of surfaces, a world of inner matter. This is the universe as a living being, the source of the living water. The symbol here of spirit is not the wind associated with heaven and the idea of this coming down from this distant divine entity. It's the waters of the unconscious. It's the living spirit, this spirit is within you. And you don't find it by looking up. This is not about trying to plug you in to the sky. This is about trying to reconnect your rational speaking, thinking mind with the whole, organic but living reality from which you've arisen, from which you've emerged. It's not about looking up, it's about looking within. And the rebirth of Christianity is about reconnecting your rational mind with your interior life, with your soul, right? Or your psyche, with your unconscious mind. And through the unconscious mind, this is important. For Jung has a conception of the collective unconscious. And the truth is that our rational mind doesn't just emerge out of our own body. Right? There's all sorts of stuff in philosophy about language. Wittgenstein on the impossibility of a private language. The way that language is connected to how we think and conceive of ourselves, our ideas of ourselves, our very consciousness. And this language doesn't just pop out of our brains. Right? It emerges from the long history of humanity and the creatures that preceded us. Right? It's evolved over millions of years, and it's emerged from the relationships of countless people. Right? We aren't just our body. When we celebrate the Eucharist. To me, this isn't a commemoration of Jesus. This is a celebration, an acknowledgement of our deep interconnectedness. So, another way of talking about it is that I believe that Christianity, I believe that the whole of the sort of Christian doctrine, to the extent that it's valid and useful, is symbolic. And so I have no issue with biblical scholarship when it talks about how this compendium of books has gradually come together and been edited, and about how at times it's been used to try and advance political agendas rather than to express anything deeply spiritual. But this long history of evolution of this book is a history, like us, of emergence from this sort of not just the individual minds of the people who wrote various passages within it and edited it and put it together, but a collective endeavour. It's emerging from the human psyche. But it's emerging for a purpose, and that purpose, a symbol, symbolises something. So an atheist is like somebody who doesn't understand how symbolism works. You hand them the map and go, that'll tell you how to get to London or something, and they look at the map and they go, look, it's just a bit of paper. What do you mean? This doesn't tell us anything. Here it is. Look, it's a bit of paper and it's got some ink on it and it's got splodges and colours. And look, that little dot, that isn't London. That's just that's a dot on the paper, right? What are you talking about? You're nuts. Rip it up. It's no use, right? And then a believer, right? A lot of believers, they're like somebody who gets the map, right, and goes, and they've been taught to believe that this map is wonderful and that this map can save them, can get them from where they are to London. And they look at the map and they go, no, we must preserve this map. and they fold it up and they put it in a little pouch, and they, and they put it on a table and they venerate it and they go, yes, this is wonderful, we must preserve this, and eventually, God willing, we will get to London. Right? It's both barking, right? They both haven't understood the nature of a symbol. A symbol is not the thing it's about. The symbol is something that points you, directs you towards the important thing, the thing that is symbolized. And it's this process of reconnection with the living waters, of the unconscious, and of your deep interconnectedness to other human beings and the world, that is ultimately the union of love that is God, right? That's what it's about. Not venerating the map, not arguing about, whether the map's made of divine inspirational paper, right? It's, there's in Buddhism, I think Zen, there's an aphorism about, using a finger to point at the moon, and it's not the finger. You've got to stop looking at the finger, you've got to follow it and get to the moon. So, to me, as a symbol of a deep mystery relating to our interconnectedness, and not just as a symbol of it, but as a guide to the way that we should be relating to our existence and to our fellow human beings, right? Which I think a lot of atheists will acknowledge about, at least about Christianity, when it's conceived of in terms of the message of love that Jesus gives, and not translated into this reiteration of the darkest and most oppressive and divisive parts of the Old Testament. They'll agree with that. So I believe that what Christianity is pointing to, the realignment that its symbolism directs us towards, and the reconnection to the source that its mysteries symbolize, I think that is something that we desperately need. It's something very important, and I think that the way that the modern world is going, while I very much value science and think it's important, empiricism, in as much as it focuses on the appearances of things rather than the interior living water of things, is a mistake. Right? It's useful, but it's like rationality. It is very useful, but once you make it your master by deciding it is the measure of all things, then you become lost. There was no original sin. You don't need saving. You're not going to hell. Right? But if you are caught up in this, in the rationalism that denies the interior life, and that makes the eye, the observation, the measurement, the measure of all things, of all that matters, all that is important, then you are in danger of entering a state of psychic, when I say psychic, I'm not talking supernatural, but psychological fragmentation that is ultimately destructive. And it is that that we, you know, this is why Jesus uses so many parables, or in his parables he talks about the eye, and if your eye offends you, plucking it out, and not being taken in by the eye, and the equation of the eye with the devil, with the phenomenal world, and the phenomenal world as being a fallen or false world. This is something that the world very much needs. And you can do it, right? You can do it by, if you are a Christian and you can genuinely believe that there was a fall and that Jesus was divinely, and that he died, and you listen to the message about loving God and your neighbour and trying to reconnect to spirit, and you may be believing something that is not true, but you will be turning around. You will be making the adjustment. It's not that one has to convince people who can believe in that story that it's false, but it is vitally important to my mind that the leaders in the faith understand where the meat is and stop insisting on looking at the wrapper and treating the wrapper as though it's the whole. That's my take on it. It's why I go to church. I want that. I don't want this just to be an individual thing, my own, it's my own revelation. I've had my own revelation. I have had my experience of gnosis. It's wonderful and everything, but we're on a journey, and this is not a one-man journey. We're on a journey together. And in the case of Britain and the Western world, the primary connector, language of connection, the primary system of symbolism is Christianity. And so that is the way that we can, with a regenerated Christianity, a re-understood Christianity, one where we now recognize that the plug is not the electricity, that the plug just needs to be plugged in, and that this plugging in is not praying to God up there, it's looking within to the whole, to understand how you have emerged and are deeply connected and hugely dependent on this living water of the interior universe, the interior of what isn't just you, it's the universe, it's the earth, and it's the greater universe, and it goes beyond the singularities that bound this universe. It is truly transcendental. Right. I don't know if I've managed to convey this very well, but I think it's an important message, so I will keep chipping away at it. If you got here, I hope you found it interesting, maybe even valid and informative. Thank you. Goodbye.